Yeah.
So, yeah. So hello everyone. Uh, I'm going to present about the double commutant theorem. I'm going to state the theorem and prove it. So mainly, what we do is we take a Hilbert space H and look at B of H, the bounded linear operators in it. We give some topology in it, and it's obviously a C star algebra, and we try to understand how the ring structure and the topology interacts. This is one step towards it. Okay. So I will define what the commutant is, and I will prove this theorem. So before proving this theorem, we need some machinery. We need to understand the topology on B of H. So, yeah. So I will first define three different topologies on B of H. Maybe you would have seen this earlier. I'll just quickly recall them. Uh, so firstly, there's the usual topology, uh, which is the norm topology we give to B of H. So in this topology, we study the convergence of nets and sequences in each of the topology. Okay. So in this topology, a sequence Tn or a net Tn converges to T if and only if norm of Tn minus T converges to 0. Okay. This is the usual topology. Now I define two more topologies in B of H. So the next one is the strong operator topology. We have also seen this. So what I will do is I will just give a basis for this topology and a subbase for this topology, so that because we will use this in our theorem. So the basis of this strong operator topology is given by a collection of subsets n which depend upon points in h, and this epsilon is greater than 0, and we fix an this is an open set around, this is a basic open set around t, the fixed point t in b of h. So this is the collection of all those s such that norm of sxi minus txi is less than epsilon for all I. So we fix endpoints in the Hilbert space and collect all those operators which map those endpoints near to txi. Right. This is a basic open set around T. And if we collect all these open sets, we will get uh, a basis for this topology, strong operator topology. And so if you just take one second. So if you just take one point, then this is going to be a subbase. And with the subbase, you intersect uh, you take finite intersections and you get the basis. Right? So, and we have also seen this convergence. We say in this lecture, whenever I say convergent weakly or convergent strongly or weakly close, strongly close, everything means the strong operator topology and the weak operator topology. I won't be referring to the uh, weak topology or strong topology in the Hilbert space H. So we will be working only on B of H.
Well, we haven't defined weak operator topology, no?
Yes, sir. I will define it in the next slide. So we have only defined strong operator topology in our course. So uh, sequence or net Tn converges to T strongly if and only if it converges pointwise in norm. This converges. This is in H, right? So one way to an intuition for this is the norm topology in H is called the strong topology of H. There are two topologies in H, which is the strong topology and the weak topology. By strong topology, I mean just norm. So here what this means is a sequence of operators converges to T strongly if and only if pointwise it converges strongly in H. Strongly in the sense in norm in H. Okay. So by this we can give another topology. So like changing this strong convergence to weak convergence pointwise. Right. So I'll just recall this base because I will use it in. So we fix endpoints in H and fix an operator T and an epsilon, and we define the set of all operators S such that norm Sxi minus Txi is less than epsilon for all I. Okay. So next we will define the weak operator topology. So yeah. So I will give a subbase for this topology firstly, which is this collection of O, which depends upon, again, this is around a point T in B of H, and it depends upon 2 points X and Y in H and an epsilon. Okay. So this set is defined as a set of all S in B of H such that mod of the inner product Sx comma Y minus the inner product of Tx comma Y is less than epsilon. So the collection of these sets is a subbase for this. Here we know that the linear functionals in H are given by these, right, for some fixed y. So one way to see this, if you write this as phi y, so phi y of Sx and phi y of Tx must be less than epsilon, right? Okay. So, and this will imply this. So Tn, we say a sequence of operator or net of operators Tn converges to T weakly if and only if pointwise the convergence is weak in H. Yeah. So I have given a subbase for this. So if you take finite intersections of this subbase, you get a basis for the weak operator topology in B of H. Okay. So, and with the net convergence, it is easy because we know that um, uh, see here norm Tn minus T converging to 0 will imply the pointwise convergence, right? And then this is the strong convergence in H, which is stronger than the weak convergence in H, right? So in norm implies this, it converges weakly. So we have seen this. Uh, so what happens is the weak operator topology is in general weaker than the strong operator topology, which is in turn in general weaker than the norm topology. Okay. So these are the only three topologies I will consider on B of H. Because B of H is also Hilbert space. So, but we want to study about H. So we are defining topologies which depend on H. Right. Okay. So, yeah. So next, so now I will define what a commutant of a subset of B of H is. Okay. So this is the usual definition. So for any subset H, subset S in B of H, the commutant is set of all those operators that commute with. So in this talk, I may use small English letters for the operators and also capital letters whenever needed. So yeah. So set of all y in B of H such that y commutes with all the elements in S. This is the commutant. This is denoted by S dash. So this is defined for any subset S in B of H. Okay. Okay. So we need a sequence of propositions, like to prove the theorem. So firstly, this is a simple proposition. For any arbitrary subset S in B of H, the S dash, the commutant of S, is a unital subalgebra of B of H. And the second thing is it is closed in the weak operator topology. So yeah, we have defined three topologies on B of H. In fact, since it is closed in the weak operator topology, it is going to be closed in the other two topologies also. This is the weakest of them. So what this proposition says is that for any subset, the commutant is going to be a unital subalgebra of B of H. But that is clear because this just uses the distributivity and associativity properties of the operators, right? So this is clear. S dash will be, one will also be there because it is the identity, and being a subalgebra is clear because you take it is closed under addition and scalar multiplication and also multiplication by associativity. So this is clear. So what we have to show is that this commutant S dash is closed in the weak operator topology, right? So for that, what I do is I will show that its complement, S dash complement, is open in the weak operator topology. Fine. And since we have defined a basis for a subbase for weak operator topology, it is enough to prove that any point in the complement contains a subbase, weak subbase around it, which is also contained in the complement. Then we would have proved that S dash complement is open in weak topology, right? Yeah. So so we choose an now I use capital letters because we want to use small letters for elements in H. So we choose an.
Do you really
Yes.
want to go through open this idea? Because proving closed will be easier, I think.
Yes, sir, but this also follows like in 2 steps.
Okay, immediately, is it? Okay.
Yeah, yes. So, um,
Okay, if T lambda converges to T and T lambda commutes with yes, T will commute with yes. So it's
yes.
true. That's all.
Okay, I just wanted to use this because I
Okay,
can imply these functions are
okay.
continuous.
Okay. Oh, no problem. Go ahead.
So yeah, we pick a operator u in the complement, and since it is not in the commutant of S, we can find an element in S which does not commute with this, right? So we can find a T naught such that u T naught is not equal to T naught u, right? So, but this implies we can find 2 points x and y in H such that this inner product is non-zero because this operator is non-zero. Otherwise, if we have also seen this, if this is 0 for all x and y, implies T is itself 0, right? So we can find points like this. So now the idea is simple. Uh, if you recall the basis for weak topology, this immediately implies that these functions, these are continuous, right? Because that is how we define this basis, sub base. So this is non-zero. So by the continuity, we can find a weak neighborhood around U such that for all those V there, V T naught minus T naught V, this inner product is non-zero. So this complement is open. So S dash is closed. So what we have shown is that for any subset, S dash is a unital subalgebra, and also it is closed in the weak operator topology. This is proposition 1. Now, for the second proposition, this is a small observation. It's a corollary. So, for any subset which is closed under the formation of adjoints, which means S equals S star, where S star is just X star such that X belongs to S. So, if the subset we choose is closed under star, then the commutant will be a C star subalgebra of B of H. Right? We already know this is a subalgebra of B of H. We have to show that is a C star subalgebra. For that, we have to show it is also closed under the star operator. That is, it's closed under the adjoints. Right? So we look at the commutant of the adjoint in general, right? So we take a point y in S star dash, which is the commutant of S star. So y commutes with all the points in S star. This is equivalent to saying that y commutes with all x star such that x is in S, right? By definition of S star. Y x star equals x star y for all x in S, because y belongs to the commutant of S star. So this, by taking adjoints, this is equivalent to saying that xy star equals y star x for all x in S, right? And this is just the definition of y star being in the commutant of S. So y belongs to S star dash if and only if y star belongs to the commutant of S. So in particular, if we choose our set S such that S star equals S, then S dash will be equal to S dash star. That is what we want. We want the set to be closed under adjoints. We got that. Assuming this subset was closed under adjoints. So, yeah. So next, so yeah. Before that, for any subset, we can we can just go and take adjoints for take commutants for the subsets. Like we can take S and then we get S dash, and then we can take the commutant of this, and then it keeps going on, right? So what this proposition says is that um, the first one is just an observation. If S is a subset of T, then the commutant of T is contained in the commutant of S. That is clear because if the operators commute with elements in T, then they commute with elements in S. So T dash is contained in S dash. This is clear, right? Just from the definition. Now, what the second statement says that, so um, this is just formalizing the idea of taking adjoints commutants repeatedly. Okay, so s dash n plus 1, the n plus 1th commutant is just the commutant of the nth commutant, right? And the first commutant is defined as s dash itself. This is just notation. Fine. Yeah. So the claim is that s dash will be equal to s dash 2n plus 1 for all n greater than or equal to 0. That is, like s dash will be equal to s triple dash, and then s dash fifth commutant, and so on. All the odd numbers. Right? And the second claim is that s double dash, that is s dash 2, will be equal to all the higher even commutants, 4 dash and so on, right? So yeah. Um, so in this sequence, so the even terms are equal and the odd terms are equal. So we are interested in the case where s becomes equal to s dash, s double dash. This is the main um, intuition for this double commutant theorem. When the set and the double commutant become equal, right? So yeah. So firstly, no, I will prove the second one now. So firstly, note that for any subset S is contained in its double commutant, right? This also follows from the definition. So uh, any point, like, this is clear, right? S will be contained in its double commutant. Just from the definition, double commutant is set of all points that commute with the first commutant, but it itself is the set of all points which commute with S. So this follows. Now we apply. See, this does not depend on S or anything. This is just some arbitrary subset S, right? So we can do this unique containment for S dash also, because S dash is a subset of B of H. So S dash will be contained in S triple dash by this argument. Any subset is contained in its double commutant, right? Now you look at this containment, and from 1, which says if a subset is contained in another subset, there is reverse containment in the commutants, right? So if we apply that, uh, um, yeah. So before that, if you apply 1 to this, S is contained in the double commutant, then we see that S triple dash is contained in S dash from 1. Right? You take commutants both sides and the containment reverses. And now if we so yeah, so from here, this and this, we see that S dash equals S triple dash. We applied 1 to this containment, we get S triple dash is contained in S dash, but we know S dash is obviously contained in S triple dash, so they are equal. And we can do the same argument for S triple dash and show that this is true. The odd At the odd stages they will be equal, right? And similarly, we can do this for the even things also. We can start with um, like S dash is contained in S triple dash, and then apply 1 to this, we get this. But we already know S double dash is contained in S triple this thing. So these two are equal. These two are equal. So again, if we do the same argument for S dash for the fourth commutant, the even powers will be equal. So yeah, this is just formalizing the idea of taking commutants in a sequence. Okay. Now I to prove the double commutant theorem, I need some machinery in. I need to know about operators on the direct sums of Hilbert spaces. Mainly, first I will recall what the direct sum was. This was defined already. So we take a collection of Hilbert spaces Hi indexed with I, then set of all sequences that set of all this need not be countable. The set of all collection that such that xi is in hi, and the summation, the norm square in this norm is in this is in the ith place, it is in hi. Okay, so this summation must be finite. This is called the direct sum of hi. Right? So this becomes a Hilbert space with this norm, with this inner product. Inner product of two elements xi and yi is just the summation of inner product point wise, coordinate wise, right? So we have seen this. Now this is just notation. I'll write h bar n to be the direct sum of h n times. Okay. Now I want to take an operator, so I will prove this. See, I will show that Mn of B of H is isomorphic to B of Hn as C star algebras. So this is the set of n cross n matrices with entries from B of H. Okay, and this is B of H power n. H power n is a Hilbert space. This is just the bounded linear operators on H power n. I will show these two are isomorphic as C star algebras. So a priori we don't know what the C star algebra structure here is. So even the norm, there is some confusion what norm to give. So what I do is that I'll give a bijection between these two spaces. So this is just a tool so that we can study operators as matrices. That's all. So I want to study each operator as a matrix, which will prove to be helpful later. Okay. So I'll give a bijection between these two spaces, and this will induce a norm in this, which makes it into a norm linear space. And then we will define an operation star on this, which will make it into a C star algebra also. The multiplication will be the usual multiplication, and the addition will be the usual addition. Right. So first for the bijection, yeah. Okay. So, and this can be, I am doing this only for n copies of H. This can be done in general also, as you will see in the proof. Each, these need not be equal to H. They can be any, they can be an arbitrary direct sum. Okay. So yeah. So I will, for notation purpose, I write Hn to be the direct sum of I equals to 1 to n Hi. Okay. So where each Hi is H. Fine. Okay. Now we consider the projections from Hn to Hi, right, and call them Pi. So the idea is, see, this is Hn. There's an operator T here. This is the direct sum of Hi's. This is also the direct sum of Hi's. So what we do is we take this T and restrict to one of the, say, Hj, and then apply it, and then project it, and then you project it to the ith coordinate. Right? In that case, we get a map from Hj to Hi. We apply the operator and then project, do the ith projection. We do this for all I and j. So we get a collection. We put that into a matrix, and that is what we call the matrix of T. So I will formalize this. So for each T in B of Hn, we define Tij to be, so please note this. So we will use this later, right, in the proof. So Tij is Hj is a map from Hj to Hi, which is defined as I said, you restrict T to Hj and then compose it with Pi. Okay. This is Tij. It is a map from Hj to Hi. Then Tij belongs to B of Hj comma Hi. This is just restriction and then composition, and it is bounded because this norm is less than or equal to 1 of the projection. So this norm will be less than or equal to norm of T. So this will be bounded. So so yeah, Hj and Hi are all H. So this belongs to B of H. Right? Okay. So now I give a map from B of H power n to Mn of B of H, which is defined to be the matrix of Tij. The matrix of T is just entries with Tij. Ijth entry is Tij. That is the matrix of T. Okay. So, and this will be a bijection, because for if you take a matrix and then you formally left multiply it, and then you associate this operator to this matrix, that will give a bijection between, set up a bijection. This will make psi into a bijection. This is an inverse for that. You can check this. This is trivial. So what we have done is we have identified b of h power n with mn of b of h with a bijection. This is just multiplication. We take a matrix and associate with the operator, which is just multiplication by that matrix. Okay. Yeah. Now, yeah, we have to show that this is a C star isomorphism. Most of the steps are clear, but I'll just do two of them so that just for completion. So we should show that psi of Ts and is equals to the matrix product of Tij and T and S. This is the matrix of T. This is the matrix of S. We should show that psi of Ts, that is the function that associates the operator to its matrix, that is the matrix of Ts, equals the product of the matrices of T and S. Right. So we will see that. So these two are matrices. To show equality, I will show it at the ijth place. Each entry is equal. So the ijth place of the matrix Ts is Ts ij. It is defined to be Ts restricted to Hj composed with Pi, and then apply Pi. Okay, Pi composed, Ts restricted to Hj, as we saw. So this was the definition, right? For any operator, this was the definition. Okay. So this is the definition for the ith place of Ts, the matrix Ts. Okay. Now we will show that Ts ij and the ijth place of this product, summation over k, tik, skj, these two operators are same on Hj. If we show that, we would have shown that the ijth place of these two matrices are same. So that is also simple. So Ts ij of xj is nothing but by definition Pi Ts of xj, but this S is nothing but summation over k skj. Because xj is in Hj, so we have maps from this is S1j, S2j, and so on, right? So if we add all of them, then we get S, map S. From that is, it will be restricted to Hj, right? So that is this. Now, so T is just an operator, so we bring it in, and we again see that T also can be written as this sum. We replace T by summation over L, T Lk, because Skj is a map from Hj to Hk, right? So we want T Lk to be a map from Hk to HL, so that this makes sense, right? So that we are choosing that K for at each step. K differs. Okay, but at the end we are going to apply the projection I, right? So this L only those maps which map into Hi will make sense, because other maps will be other things will be mapped to 0 when L is not equal to I. So this just becomes this sum Tik Skj. This, because at each place only the Tik survives, all the others are 0 after we project with Pi. So this is this, and then we want to see that the star operation is preserved. The psi of T star equals psi of T the whole star. So again, I'll write here. So here the star operation is just on the matrices. We have the matrix Tij. The star of this is just Tji. We take the transpose and then take the star inside each of the elements. Okay. So we want to show that the matrix of T star and the star of the matrix of T are same. Okay, so we use the uniqueness of adjoints for Tij. Okay, at yeah, so Tij is a map from Hj to Hi, right? So Tij whole star is a map from Hi to Hj. We want to prove this. We want to prove that Tij, the whole star, is T star of Ji, right? That is what we want to prove. At each Ij, at each position, Tij, the whole star, must be equal to T star of Ji. See, T star is an operator itself. So T star of Ji is a map from Hi to Hj. We get this by restricting T star to Hi and then applying the projection Pj, right? We want to show that this is the same as this thing, Tij, the whole star. That's the adjoint of Tij. So that is also simple. I'll quickly go through this. So Tij of this Yj is in Hj and this is Xi is in Hi. So it is enough to prove this. That is Tij, Yj, Xi is same as Yj, T star Ji, Xi. Then we would have shown that T star Ji is the adjoint of Tij. So Tij, Yj, Xi is, by definition, Tij is this Pi composite T restricted to Hj, Yj, Xi. This is same as uh, uh, Pi T Yj, Xi, but Pi is a projection, so it is self-adjoint, goes to that side. But Xi is again in Hi, so Pi of Xi is Xi itself. This a property of the projection, because the Pi is the ith projection. Any point in Hi will be fixed by Pi, right? So this will become T restricted to Hj, Yj, Xi. You use that Pi is the self-adjoint, and it acts as identity on Hi. And this will be equals to Tyj Xi. This is just the restriction. So, and then we apply adjoint of T, Yj, T star Xi. But this is same as T star restricted to Hi Xi, because Xi is in Hi. And this is again same, Yj is again same as Pj Yj, because this is projection onto the jth coordinate. And again using the self-adjointness, this becomes T star Ji. So we have shown this. So what we have done is, we have identified B of H power n with B of Hn with Mn of B of H, n cross n matrices with entries in B of H. We will use this in our proof, and we will use the map psi. That is the identification we gave. Fine.
So like, so basically the star structure in M and BH is just coordinate, coordinate with star, right? To
No,
all
you
the
take
entries.
a transpose and then you put star in the coordinates.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So this will be Tij, the whole star is Tji star.
Yeah, right. Done.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll move on to the next one. So this next proposition is an equivalence condition for P being in the commutant and some things. So let's see. We start with a closed subset of H, the Hilbert space H. M be a closed subset of the Hilbert space H, and we let P denote the orthogonal projection onto M. Okay. And for any subset S in B of H, these two conditions are equivalent. Okay. The first condition is that M is invariant under all these operators X in S. We took a subset S of B of H. So this consists of operators on H. If this closed subspace M is invariant under all the operators in S, then XP equals PXP for all X in S, where P is just the projection onto M. These two conditions are equivalent. We can write this out, but a simple way to see is that use the matrix representation. See, yeah. Now we decompose H as M direct sum M perp, and consider the matrix of X with respect to this direct sum decomposition. Okay. So for example, x11 will be from M to M. X12 will be from M perp to M. Xij will be from Hj to Hi, right? So this will be this, and so on. So the point is, these two conditions are equivalent for the matrix being in this form. That is, the x21 entry must be 0. This is clear because if x is left invariant under M, then the map M to M perp will be 0, right? You apply uh, if you apply x and then project it to M perp, it will be 0 because M is invariant under x. So this will be 0. Again, if this is 0, that is what it means. So 1 is equivalent to this matrix being this. And again, for 2, if you see, the projection can be identified like this. The projection is identity on from M to M, and from M perp to M it is 0, and from M to M perp again it is 0, and from M perp to M perp it is 0, right? So this is the matrix of the projection. So if you just write out this condition, it will mean that this entry must be 0. You just do the matrix multiplication of this, and then equate it. This means this entry must be 0. Okay, so the first two conditions are equivalent. Next, and suppose further we assume that this subset is closed under adjoints, that is, it is self-adjoint, S equals S star. Then these two conditions are also equivalent to P being in the commutant of S. Okay, you take an arbitrary subset such that it is closed under adjoints, then these two conditions, that is, any operator in S leaving M invariant and xp equals to pxp for all x in S, these two conditions are equivalent to P being in the commutant of S. You will see a proof for this. So this is also just writing out the definitions, that's all. So now suppose that S is self-adjoint. We assume S is self-adjoint, and if 1 and 2 are satisfied, then by the second condition, xp equals to pxp, right? And since it is self-adjoint, for this also applies for x star, for x in X. X star p equals px star p, right? Now, if you take adjoints in this equation, we find that px equals pxp, and if you compare with this equation, we get px equals to xp, right? And px equals xp. So p is in the commutant of S. Now, conversely, if p is in the commutant, then px equals to xp, then and pxp is, we commute this xp square, but p square is p, is xp. So 3 implies 2, but 1 and 2 are already equivalent. So all the three conditions are equal. So we will use this equivalence in our proof. That is, uh, we will have a self-adjoint subset, and something will be in the commutant, and then we will use these two conditions. Okay. We'll come back. Now next, I will state the. Now we are in a position to state the double commutant theorem. So again, this is an equivalence between three statements. So the following conditions are equivalent on a unital star subalgebra M of B of H. Okay, we start with a unital star subalgebra of a M of B of H. So M being weakly, so here weakly, strongly, all refers to the weak operator topology and strong operator topology. M being weakly closed is equivalent to M being strongly closed, and it is equivalent to M being the double commutant itself. So these three conditions are equivalent. This is what the double commutant theorem states. And any subalgebra which satisfies this is called a von Neumann algebra. Okay. So see, M being weakly closed implies M being strongly closed, right? We saw it at the beginning. Weak topology is in fact weaker than the strong topology. So 1 implies 2 is clear, and 3 implies 1. See, we showed that if S is an arbitrary subset, then S dash is weakly closed, right? We showed this at the beginning. For any arbitrary subset, the commutant is going to be weakly closed. But in particular, M, the double commutant of M is the commutant of M. So this is weakly closed. This equality implies that M is weakly closed. So 3 implies 1 is also clear. So the only thing we must prove is that if M is strongly closed, then M equals its double commutant. So this will be proved in the next theorem. This will follow from the next theorem. So that is, we have proved the double commutant theorem modulo whatever we are going to prove. That is 2 implies 3, right? So this is the next theorem is called the von Neumann's density theorem. It's just a name. What this says is that for any unital star subalgebra of B of H, the double commutant is the closure of A in the strong operator topology. Okay. So we assume A is a unital star subalgebra, and the double commutant of A is the closure of A in the strong operator topology. This is the statement of this theorem. We will see a proof. But before that, how this theorem implies this 2 implies 3. So if we assume M equals M dash dash, then since M dash dash is the closure of M in strong operator topology, this means that M is strongly closed, right? M is the closed, M dash dash is the closure of M in the strong operator topology. This equality means that M is strongly closed. This implies M is strongly closed, right? So then we would have proved this theorem modulo this statement. Okay, so we want to show some subset is the closure of the other, right? But we already know that A dash dash is closed in the strong operator topology, because we again in the beginning we saw that commutant of any subset is weakly closed. Being weakly closed implies it is strongly closed and it is closed in the norm and everything, right? So A double dash is closed in the strong operator topology, and we also saw this A is just contained in A dash dash, right? Just by definition. So A sits inside A dash dash, which is strongly closed. So to show that A dash dash is the closure of A, it is enough to prove that A is strongly dense in A dash dash. Yeah.
Where we have where we have proved A dash dash is strongly closed.
Yeah. See, at the beginning, we show that if S is an arbitrary subset, S dash is weakly closed, right?
Oh yes, yes.
So we just take S dash here, then S dash dash is weakly closed. Yeah. So yes. Now yeah, we want to show A dash dash A is strongly dense in A dash dash, right? So for that, we will first look at the basis of the strong operator topology. At the beginning, we saw this. So so to show that A dash dash is, that is, any point in A dash dash must be a limit point of A, right? Or any point in any basic open subset around a fixed point must contain a point from A, right? So we choose a point Z in A dash dash, and it is enough to prove that for any n and any n points in H and an epsilon greater than 0, we can find an operator X in A such that norm of X minus Z, zeta I is less than epsilon for 1 less than or equal to I less than or equal to n. This just means that the basic open subset for the strong topology, I'll go back. So this was the basic open subset for the strong topology, right? We chose n points in H and we fixed an operator. The basic open subset around the operator is set of all operators such that Sxi minus Txi, this norm is less than epsilon for all I, right? So we have to show that for any basic open subset around Z contains a point X in A. So that is the condition I have written here. Sorry. Yeah. We want to find an X like this. So firstly, what we do is, this is the idea. So we are given with n points here. we first prove for one point. That is, if we just have zeta 1, we will show that we can choose an operator x such that norm of x minus z zeta is less than epsilon for any given epsilon. Okay, and then what we do is we consider hn, right? And we look at see we here a is a subset of b of h, right? And then if we look at all those matrices with entries from a, scalar matrices, this is like a, this will be a subset of um, b of h power n with our identification, right?
Diagonal.
Sorry.
No, diagonal. You said scalar.
Yes, sorry. Diagonal operator, but all the entries are same. They don't differ. Okay. So this is a subset of b of h power n with our identification with m1 of b of h, right? What we do is we take this operator. Sorry, not this. So what we do is we use this thing what we proved for n equals to 1, and we choose these n elements zeta 1 to zeta n. We take this tuple zeta 1 up to zeta n, right? And then apply n equals to 1 for that tuple. So we will end up with this. It will be clear when we look at it. So this is the idea. So we consider the direct sum and then apply n equals to 1 for that, because it is just, this is just 1 point, right? This tuple is 1 point in Hn. So that we can, if we prove it for case n equals to 1, we can use that for in Hn to get this. That will be the proof. Okay. So for case n equals 1, we just start with 1 point. What we do is we consider this set a zeta. So a is a subset of b of h. We apply all operators x to zeta and collect all those points. This is a subset of h, right? And then we take the closure, and that closure we denote it by m. Okay. Yeah. So I name zeta 1 to be zeta. Okay. Now note that we started with the unital star subalgebra of b of h, right? So this will imply that a zeta itself is a vector subspace, and it contains zeta because 1 is in a. So 1 times zeta is zeta. So zeta is here, and vector space, that is also clear because if you just write out down the condition, it will be closed under addition and scalar multiplication, right? So this is because a is so, a is closed under the addition and scalar multiplication and all that, right? So a zeta will be a vector subspace containing zeta of h. Now we are taking a closure of this subspace, so it is going to be a subspace again, and also it will be invariant under a. That is how we define a zeta. M is the closure of a zeta. You take any point, say x zeta in a zeta, then it is obviously closed under this. And if you take a limit point of this, then by continuity it will also be closed under that is, it will, if you take a limit point, it will also, we can find an operator in a for which x zeta is that point, right? We need closeness because we are going to the closeness is okay. We need this invariantness from a because if you recall, we proved a proposition state an equivalence. Sorry. So we, for this condition, we are going to use this for all x in a. Yeah. Okay. So M is a closed subspace. We consider its projection, and now again, since it was invariant and A is a star unital subalgebra, A equals A star. So we can use the third statement. P will belong to A dash by the equivalence we saw, right? Because it is invariant under all points in A. So P will belong to A dash. Okay. So now we started with the point Z in a dash dash, right? We want to find an x such that norm of x minus z zeta is less than epsilon. So this z commutes with this p, this projection. So this means that the m is invariant under z, right? Because it commutes with its projection. If you just write down z of m and apply this, you'll get that m is invariant under z, right? In particular, z zeta belongs to m because m contains zeta. We just saw because A was a unital subalgebra. So z zeta belongs to m. Now, what was m when m was the closure of A zeta? So we can find a point x in A such that z zeta minus x zeta, the norm is less than epsilon for any epsilon, right? That was m. M was the closure of A zeta, right? So z zeta being in m implies that we can find a point x zeta as close as we want. So we have done for case n equals to 1, right? Now we will move on to the general case. So here we use the matrix and all that. So for an arbitrary n, we have to show this. What? So we have to find an operator x in A such that x minus z zeta I is less than epsilon for all I, right? For n points given. So yeah. First, now we consider Hn. As before, it is the direct sum of Hn times. Again, we identify B of Hn with Mn of B of H. Okay. So any operator is given by a matrix, and with the matrix, you can get an operator. So we consider the diagonal element an for each a in A. Right. For any operator, we can consider this diagonal element in Mn of B of H. So this is an operator in operator on Hn. The notation is a to the n. This is the diagonal matrix with A in the diagonal entries. Now, why we are doing this is we want to use case n equal to 1 on Hn. We choose one point, that is zeta 1 up to zeta n, the tuple in Hn, and apply case n equal to 1. For that, we have to have a copy of A inside this, and we want to have a copy of A dash dash. So, and then apply that. So this will be clear. So we consider A to the n to be an for A in A. This an is the diagonal matrix with entries A. So, and A to the n is set of all an, A is in A. This is a copy of A inside, this is in Mn of B of H. Right. Okay. Now, since A is a unital star subalgebra, it follows that an is a unital star subalgebra of B of H power n. Sorry, this is, yeah, B of H power n or Mn of H, B of H, whatever, because we have identified both. So this is clear because one is in A and this diagonal will be in A, and this is just all the elements are same, so the product is going to be inside, and this will follow that A to the n is a unital star subalgebra of B of H power n, because we want whatever we have proved for case n equals to 1, we assumed it to be unital star subalgebra. So now we have a unital star subalgebra in B of H power n, right? Now we will look at what the commutant of this star subalgebra and the double commutant of this is. Okay, this will be in a very nice form. So again, this is just the diagonal matrices with entries from A times identity. Right? Okay. So the commutant of an is the set of matrices with entries from A dash. This is Bij. Bij belongs to A dash. So this is natural, right? We want to if we want some matrix to commute with these matrices, then we want the Bij's to be in A dash. That will be clear because see, if we take a matrix B, Bij, then Ba to the n will be Bij, this matrix with entries Bij, because this matrix had entries A in the diagonal. And again, conversely, this will be this. So if they are equal, if they are equal at each coordinate, then one will follow. You want each element to commute with A. And the converse is also similar. That is, if you take any matrix of this form, then it will commute with this. Okay. So now we will look at the double commutant. Why we are doing this? Again, we want to apply case n equal to 1, right? So we want a point, we take a point in the double commutant and apply. So we want to know what the double commutant is. So the double commutant of A to the n is, you take the double commutant of A and then you consider all the diagonal matrices. This is just Z to the n, Z in A dash dash. All the diagonal matrices with entries from A dash dash. So you'll see that. That is also natural because, see, you consider this matrix Eij, which has entry 1. 1 here is 1 is the element in B of H, right? The matrix entry of the matrices come from B of H. 1 is the identity on H. This is the ijth entry must be 1 and 0 elsewhere. Then this obviously commutes with A to the n dash, because A to the n dash was nothing but Bij, where Bij comes from A dash, right? Yeah, okay. Sorry, that was a mistake. So what I meant to say was these entries, I'll make it clear. These Eij's are matrices with entries 1 in the ith place and 0 ijth place and 0 on the others. This commute with A, right? So they belongs to the A power n. So they belong to A power n dash. They commute with the diagonal matrices. So they belong to A to the n dash. That is what I meant to say. Sorry. Okay. So for an element to belong to A to the n dash dash, it must commute with this Eij in particular. This is the commutant of this commutant, first commutant, right? So it must commute with all the Eij's. But this means, again, we can find a Z in B of H. It is going to be a matrix with all the, if you just write these conditions out, this is, since this is true for all I and j, we get a matrix with entries, a diagonal matrix with constant entries. That is, all the elements are the same. We can find a Z in B of H such that Y is the diagonal matrix Z to the n. Okay. So that is what we want to. I mean, we have shown that there is an element Z such that this matrix is this, but Z will be in A dash dash because Z commutes with Bij in particular, right? Because of this identification. Is it clear? We have shown that this matrix is a diagonal matrix with an entry in B of H because it commutes with all these matrices Eij's. But that entry in the diagonal must be an entry from A dash dash because it commutes with this Bij's, right? With this identification. That point must commute with these Bij's. That's Z. So it must be in the double commutant because these Bij's were the single commutant of A. So what we have shown is this. The claim is proven. So now we are in a position, we are in the last part. So you see, we start with the point Z in A dash dash. We want to show that any basic neighborhood around Z contains a point, any strong basic neighborhood around Z contains a point X in A, right? To show that A is dense in A dash dash. So now start with the point Z in A dash dash. Consider this element, this matrix with Z everywhere. So this belongs to A to the n dash dash, as we just saw. Sorry. Yeah, as we just saw. Now this is our entry in A n dash dash, right? And we choose this vector because we would have started with n vectors and we consider that n tuple. Okay. Now by case 1, n equals 1, we can find vector in an, because this is the second commutant, we can find a vector in an, but how an will look, it is just a to the n. So we can find an a in a such that a to the n belongs to an, such that the norm of zn minus an on zeta, this point, is less than epsilon by case 1, right? But this is just again, uh, see, this implies the z minus a zeta I is less than epsilon for 1 less than or equal to I less than or equal to n, because this is how the Hilbert space norm is defined, right? You take sum of all the norms and take square of those norms and take the square root. If this can be made less than epsilon, then each point can be each tuple z minus a can be made less than epsilon, right? Because z to the n and a to the n are just diagonal matrices with entries z and a. So we have proven that a is dense in a dash dash when a is a unital star subalgebra of b of h. So that's it. Yeah, sir, that's it.
Yeah, good presentation. So you explained very well everything. So if anybody has a doubt, you can ask.
Yes.
So anyway, this is one of the fundamental theorem, and it's the most beautiful theorem in operator algebra. We can see that. See, this is an algebraic statement. A equal to a double commutant is a purely algebraic statement, and that is a topological statement, and these two statements are equivalent. And I mean, so this function operator algebra is it's a combination of both analysis and algebra. It's an intersection of analysis and algebra, and you can see that this is, I mean, both an analytic statement is equivalent to an algebraic statement, and this will have very strong implications everywhere in operators. So, it's one of the nice theory. So if nobody has any doubt, I will end the session.
Okay.
Will I end it? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.